We kick things off by seeing a boy fast asleep in a bed which is in some kind of massive room. A fairy girl flies towards him and notices that he needs to be woken up, so she keeps calling out to him. The boy slowly opens his eyes and can see the fairy girl, but he doesn't realize what's going on. Now, he looks around the place and realizes that he's not in his room, and this place is most definitely not his house. Our hero is clueless as of this point, so he looks at the fairy girl, who is very cute and curvy but also has a naughty look on her face. She is glad to see that her hero is finally awake, but he doesn't feel the same way. He wonders if this is just a dream or real life, because it's not every day that you see a cute fairy girl floating above you. There's an awkward silence for a bit, but then our hero decides he's going back to sleep in hilarious fashion. The fairy girl is shocked by his behavior, so she tries to get his attention. She tries to tempt him by saying this is a dream where he's been reincarnated into another world. Of course, he pays no heed to it and starts thinking about opening a Japanese restaurant in order to make good money. He then brings his attention to the fact that if he wakes up in bed with a slave girl in front of him, then he'd be torn between fantasy and reality. As a matter of fact, he'd even want to lose his life to be reincarnated in a fantasy world if that was the case. However, our hero knows that this is not a dream, because if it was, then his intrusive thoughts would have taken over and controlled the whole scenario. His shady thoughts start to dominate his mind, so the fairy girl decides she has to try something a bit more extreme. She has an evil smile on her face as she raises her hand to summon a spell, and this leads us to believe that she's more of a demon girl than a fairy girl. She unleashes the power of water and slams a whole waterfall on our sleeping hero, which makes him wake up instantly. He's shown to be drowning for a bit, but then the fairy girl stops the attack and lets him catch his breath. Our hero struggles to get back up, but the fairy girl says that he needs to get serious now. The boy asks her who she really is, and she replies by stating she is going to be his ally from now on. This is a bit hard to believe, especially after the water attack that she just used on him. Of course, the fairy girl says sorry for resorting to such methods, but she really didn't have much of a choice. Anyway, she reveals her name to be Titania, or as her friends like to call her, Tanya. She is looking forward to work with our hero, and she presents herself in a cute manner. Our hero, whose name is finally revealed to be Shinta, recalls that Tanya's real name is similar to that of a fairy queen in one of Shakespeare's plays. He notes that Tanya doesn't really look like an innocent fairy even though she has wings, so he wonders what the deal is over here. Shinta asks Tanya what she wants from him, and the fairy girl realizes that he has no recollection of what has happened to him till this point. She decides to refresh his memory by making him remember the last thing he did when he was in Japan. Shinta uses his brains and recalls that he was in school, as can also be seen from the uniform he's wearing. He was sitting at his desk and filling a form to sort out his career path, but it didn't look like he was too interested in it. Suddenly, a sacred seal appears around him and he is trapped inside it. Shinta has no idea what this is and why it is around him, but it's too late for any second thoughts as the seal shines bright like a diamond and transports him to this dungeon room. Tanya now asks Shinta if he remembers his past, and our hero has a dejected look on his face. He is feeling cold due to the water attack, and then he looks at his body to see if he is still human. Shinta has legs on his body, so that's good news for him because he believes ghosts are known to be senseless and always missing their legs. Now that he's sure he's still a human and alive, Shinta turns his attention to Tanya, who is also glad to see he is now up to speed. Now, she explains that the original plan was to have Shinta and his entire class summoned to this fantasy world filled with swords and magic. However, for some reason, only our hero was brought here, and Tanya can only make a cute face to show her own confusion. Hearing this from the fairy girl makes Shinta excited, because this is just like the fantasy stories he used to read back on Earth. He believes he has been summoned here as a hero so that he can travel with cute girls and slaves. Shinta declares that his life in this story is going to be a romantic comedy, but Tanya comments that he's only setting himself up for his own doom if he continues with this silly fantasy. Of course, every boy's dream is to have his own harem of slave girls, but he must come to terms with reality if he is to survive here. It's time to get serious, so Shinta asks Tanya what the deal is with his summoning over here. The fairy girl states that they are currently in a dungeon which is underground, but also incomplete. It is actually a gift from God to our hero, who has been forgotten in his own world by now. Tanya asks Shinta to accept this gift and she promises to support him in all his acts because it is her job to do so. She will help our hero become a dungeon master by using her powers to his desire. Shinta figures that he has been chosen to manage this dungeon as his primary job role in this life. The fairy girl is surprised that he was able to understand this so easily, especially because she thinks he has a lower level mind as compared to hers. She now leads Shinta to the most important part of the dungeon, which is the control room. This is where he can do all kinds of activities as the dungeon master. Shinta can summon monsters, buy items, set up important structures, and many other such things over here. If he has any questions or doubts about his dungeon, he can check it all out in this control room. Our hero's eyes are now diverted to a shiny red shard that's glowing inside a pillar. He moves towards it and asks Tanya what it is, only to learn that it is the core of the dungeon. As long as it remains intact, the dungeon will continue to exist, no matter what. Shinta asks what would happen if the shard were to be destroyed, and Tanya says that the dungeon, everyone inside it, and even Shinta will disappear. She will survive, but will be out on the streets if such an occasion were to happen. Basically, if Shinta wants to remain alive, then he will need to protect the dungeon core at any cost. Our hero wants to figure out the logic of this, so he states that he has lost the game if the dungeon core is destroyed. This makes him wonder if the core will disappear if he loses his life, but Tanya says that isn't the case. If our hero were to lose his life, then the dungeon will still stay intact, which Shinta finds a bit odd. The fairy girl is simply stating facts. And what's more important is that people who intrude into this space make a living by selling products found in the dungeon. Keeping this in mind, they would never want to take the dungeon core in itself, because that would simply halt their regular income source. However, if the dungeon master were to interfere, then he would be ended for his actions. None of this makes any sense to our hero, so he asks Tanya if she is on his side or that of the intruders. After all, the terms set against him are not very favorable because at the end of the day, he is at a much higher risk of losing his life every day, but the dungeon is not. Shinta has had enough of this nonsense, so he decides to leave the dungeon and go back home. Tanya tells him he's free to do that, but if he wanders off too far away from the dungeon, then he will be considered to have abandoned the dungeon core, and he will instantly end at that moment. Of course, this comes as a shocker to our hero because he just can't catch a break over here. Shinta confronts the fairy girl now and tells her to stop messing around with him. The terms set over here are totally unfair, and it's not like he had asked to be brought here in the first place. Our hero is very honest about his intentions not to be a hero, as he says he doesn't care if it's someone else's life on the line. However, he doesn't want his own life to be treated in such a way, so he wants to escape this dungeon. Tanya simply responds with a shady smile, and she asks her dungeon master to calm down. She says that if Shinta becomes a true dungeon master, then he will get to live a dream that he will never be able to experience again in his entire life. Of course, our hero is not going to be tricked by simple words, so he asks the fairy girl to give him an example of this. All she has to do is mention the chance to do unspeakable things to cute girls, and Shinta changes his mind in an instant. He is ready to do what is needed to be done, so Tanya comments on how quickly he has changed his attitude towards the whole thing. Our hero simply says that it is what it is, because he wants to live out the fantasies that he has been reading in comics and novels all this time. He even goes on to admit that he would much rather live as a shady man in this world than continue on the loser path of innocence that he had taken up back on Earth. Once again, he doesn't want to be treated as a hero, as can be seen by the intrusive thoughts that come to his mind. Now that he knows what he has to do, our hero states that he is going to build a harem dungeon and do shady things to cute and curvy girls. He simply asks this fantasy world to wait for him till he succeeds in this mission and becomes the man he has always aspired to be. Now, we move to outside the dungeon, where we see a cute girl named Philia drying some clothes outside her home. The days seem to be peaceful, but her life is going to be turned upside down very soon. Now, we see a night boy named Alto coming to meet her, and she thanks him for patrolling the scene to ensure her safety. He is more than happy to do this, probably because he is Philia's fiancé, and then he gives her a flower. Ulro says that he found it blossoming in the woods, so he thought it would look good on Philia. The cute girl wears the flower on her head, and looks even cuter than before. She blushes and thanks Alto for her kind gesture, but this is as good as it gets for her in this life. Later on, Philia learns that her mother and father have chosen to make her the living sacrifice as per the town's ritual. As expected, she doesn't want to do this, but her parents tell her that it is for the good of the town and her as well. Philia admits that it's a great honor to be chosen as the living sacrifice, but she is obviously scared. Her parents try to calm her down by saying that Alto will be with her at all times, so there's nothing to worry about. With that, the cute girl agrees to her parents' wishes, but the look on her face says a completely different story. She is alone on her bed, and she has too many thoughts clogging up her mind, so she decides to go meet Alto to feel better. However, when she goes out looking for him, she sees the night boy flirting with another cute girl the same way he was flirting with her. Philia can't believe what she's seeing as Alto puts a flower on this new girl's head the exact same way as well. The cheating couple hears a sound from somewhere, and it's obviously Philia running away from the scene, but they don't see her. With her hopes betrayed, Philia leaves her home, but walks into Shinta's dungeon and has a session with him. After they are done with their shady acts, Philia feels bad about herself and says that she always has to endure for the sake of others. Her own parents ended up selling her to the village chief, and even Alto is cheating on her despite being so sweet whenever he sees her. The curvy babe has done her best to take in all this pain and be strong, But there's only so much that she can do alone. Shinta tells her that endurance is not always a good thing, and it won't come from hard work either. Philia accepts his statement and says that her personality is weak. Of course, this is something that can't be changed in one night, so Philia just has to deal with the reality of her life. She wonders if it's going to be this way for her till the end of her life, because she's not even allowed to try to be happy. The curvy babe states that if she can't change no matter how much she tries to endure, then it would be better if she just stopped everything once and for all. This obviously implies something much darker, so our hero gives her a hug to give her some peace of mind. Philia starts to blush and doesn't know how to react to this, because it's a genuine feeling. Shinta tells her not to worry anymore, because from this point forward, there's nothing that she needs to keep on her mind. All Philia needs to do is obey his orders, and he'll make sure to give her happiness every single day. The cute girl blushes some more and hugs our hero back in order to thank him for showing her such basic kindness. Now, it's time to move on to the action, and we are taken to a mining area where we can see some goblins roaming around. We can see some kind of magical stone which is revealed to be the source of power to the whole dungeon. Basically, these stones can be converted into DP, which is then used to build, extend, and repair facilities. They are an important source of energy and can also be used to summon monsters, as is said by the demon girl Tanya. Shinta takes a look at this and asks her if there is any other way to earn DP other than mining. In order to make things easier for her master, Tanya shows him a summary that even a school kid will be able to understand. Now, we see a list of actions that can help increase DP, the first one being natural recovery by ground veins. Then, there's the option of defeating intruders, after which their corpses can be offered to the core of the dungeon as treasure items. Shinta puts his mind to work and realizes that veins aren't the best way to earn DP for his dungeon. The best option would be to lure intruders in, take their lives, and then offer their corpses to the dungeon's core. Of course, the amount of DP will also depend on the level of the intruder. The targets are now set on strong intruders of high levels, but then Tanya tells Shinta that there's another way to get the job done. It's by creating life, but our hero doesn't get what the demon fairy is trying to tell him. Tanya brings the shady look back to her face and tells Shinta that making babies is one of the other ways to earn DP. Our hero loves the act of doing such thing, and it's only proven further when the fairy demon tells him that the DP has increased around here ever since he started doing shady things with Philia. His slave girl has been a huge help as she helps Shinta act on his intrusive thoughts and release all his worries into her curvy body. However, since she has now become Shinta's slave girl properly, there is no point in trying to earn DP from her anymore because the rules will not allow it. After all, a slave girl will always be ready to serve her master, so it's like a cheat code for a boy like Shinta. This leads both Tanya and Shinta to think some more about the current situation, and the demon fairy figures that it would be best to talk to Philia to understand her better. She asks the slave girl how it felt to be captured, because she knows that she had tried to run away due to the village laws. We learn that as per these laws, every 3 years, 1 or 2 cute girls are chosen to be living sacrifices in a temple located not too far outside the village. This year, it was Philia's turn to be sacrificed, and she had heard both her parents talking to the village chief about this choice. This was too much for her to take in, so she got scared and ran away while she still had the chance. The truth of the matter is that this was nothing more than a scam for the village chief to do shady things to the girls and then sell them off to a slave trader. It was at this moment when she realized that she wasn't being sacrificed, but rather sold as a slave by her parents. Philia was really scared of what might have happened to her, so she decided to run away as there was no one she could trust anymore. Even the village guards and watchman would have come to get her, so the only possible choice was to escape without being seen. Shinta realizes that his slave girl has a much darker backstory than he had initially thought, and if he actually wanted to act like a hero, then he would have gone after the watchman and the village guards and taken them down in an instant. Of course, he also wants to know what kind of person a watchman is supposed to be. Philia explains that watchmen are just a group of adult men in every village with a strength of around 10 people during the busy season and around 50 during the off-season. Shinta figures what the seasons imply, and he states that the watchmen are just farmers who are brought in when there are no crops to grow. Since these men are not real soldiers, they won't have the kind of skills that one would expect from them. Tanya becomes excited upon hearing this, as she knows that the goblins will be no match for these watchmen due to the differences in physique. Shinta has to use his brains once more, and he realizes that he can't just use Philia as a medium to act out his intrusive thoughts. He needs a helping hand with other things too, so he asks his slave girl about the kind of work she used to do in her village. She says that she used to look after all the farm animals, she'd work in the fields as well, and on top of that, she would also knit textiles. Tanya doesn't know how useful these skills will be to Shinta, but she figures that the dungeon defense can also be boosted if Philia makes use of her livestock skills. After all, the slave girl might be able to look after the wolves and goblins inside the dungeon. Our hero realizes that the wolves inside the dungeon are actually wild animals and not just cute puppies. He had summoned them here along with the goblins, and they might not be a threat right now, but that could very quickly change once they grow up. As a matter of fact, these wolves will become even more powerful than the goblins once they reach their true power level. Now that he has understood the importance of this task, he asks Philia to take care of the goblins and the wolves as they will be needing the extra attention. Our hero tells his curvy slave girl that he's counting on her, and this makes her very happy. Philia gets to work right away, and we can see that she is very good with the wolves and the goblins even though it's her first time doing this. The happiness on her face is quite genuine, and our hero is glad to see that he has given some joy to Philia, who has otherwise had to live a rather sad life. Now, we switch to her village where Alto is just standing by his desk. His side piece tells him to stop wasting time and sulking like a loser because they need to go find Philia fast. The night boy has an odd look on his face, which makes it seem as if he has some shady intentions in mind. Anyway, he agrees with his side girl and says that it's time to step out and find the fiancé he was cheating on not too long ago. The side girl's name is revealed to be Alice, and she seems to be in some kind of rush to find Philia as soon as she can. She delves deeper into the forest, even though it's for the fiancé of the man she likes to do shady things with. Alto is with her, but he can't figure out where Philia has gone. Of course, this is the main reason why he and Alice are out here looking for her in the first place. But Alto soon figures that a party of watchmen is going to be formed to find her soon. Alice doesn't seem too pleased to hear this, but she has to agree with what her lover boy is saying. However, all of a sudden, she hears something in the bushes and lets Alto know about it immediately. The side piece needs to know where the sound is coming from, so she goes closer to the grass in the bushes to see what's going on. In a hilarious turn of events, it only happens to be Shinta, who looks like he is relieving himself from the food he had eaten not too long ago. Alice is shocked to see our hero in this state, but she wants to know why he is not wearing any clothes. It's a rather silly question to ask our hero, but he answers anyway by saying he was actually just taking a bath here and not doing anything relating to pooping. Of course, Alice is a cute and curvy girl as well, so Shinta's eyes fall on her twin peaks. His intrusive thoughts begin to take over, and our hero has a hard time trying to hold them off, so Alice realizes what's on his mind. She unleashes a spell on him, and ends up burning his clothes as a result of it. Naturally, Shinta is not too pleased by this, so he scolds the side piece for acting like this. Alto hears the commotion, so he rushes to the scene and asks Alice what Shinta was doing to her. He believes that our hero is a shady creep, even though he is the one who is cheating on his fiancée. Shinta tries to explain himself to Alto, but the night boy is not going to listen to his excuses, so he punches his face with a fist attack. After that, Alto grabs his neck and pins him to the ground, after which he demands to know what Shinta did to Alice. Luckily, the side piece has enough brain cells to tell the night boy that Shinta did not do anything to her at all, so he should stop with the violent threats. Alto leaves our hero alone, but the only clothes he had brought with him over here are burned out, so he has to wear them in that state. Alice says sorry for the way Alto had behaved with Shinta, and she asks the night boy to apologize as well. Alto does say sorry, but he doesn't look sincere at all, so it leads Shinta to question his morals. After all, Alice and Alto are the weird ones for attacking him right after burning his clothes. As a matter of fact, Alice was the one who was spying on him while he was taking a bath, so she should be the shady creep, not him. However, nothing is fair when it comes to innocent men and foolish women. Judging from their looks, Shinta figures that the couple might be from the nearby village, but they are savages in his eyes. If such people are going to attack our hero simply for taking a bath and talking to them, then it would be better to just take their lives right away and be done with it. Now, Alice asks Shinta about the clothes he's wearing because they look quite unusual. It doesn't look like the uniform from the Academy of the Royal Capital, so she wonders if Shinta is from another country. He simply responds by saying he is from a country in the East. But that's just a big lie because he's only using the tricks that he learned from reading novels and manga comics. Basically, if you say that you are from some place in the East, then you will most definitely be able to trick whoever is asking you for your identity. However, his lie doesn't seem to work on Alto, because the only people that he knows of from the East are dwarves and elves. After looking at Shinta, he states that our hero is not the right height to be a dwarf, and he doesn't suit the genetics of an elf either. The night boy is right to suspect Shinta, but Alice tells him not to ask too many questions because he's being rude and probably trying to pick up a fight. The side piece goes on to introduce herself and Alto to Shinta, and she reveals that the both of them live in the village nearby. Our hero has heard the name Alto before, so he becomes a bit alert while also introducing himself to the cheating couple. It's at this very moment where Alice asks Shinta if he's seen a girl named Philia, who has long hair which is dark and brown. Both she and Alto had heard from the people of the village that Philia might have gone into these woods, so they're hoping to find her as soon as possible. This is a lot of information for Shinta, because these two people have managed to locate the dungeon area already. Our hero uses his brain and tries to think of a way to deal with Alto and Alice, but the problem is that he has already been beaten down by the Night Boy. Of course, he would love to get his revenge, but the problem is that he doesn't have the energy to do so. On top of that, it's 2 against 1 at this point, and he doesn't have super strength, so he can't afford to take his chances right now. That's when it hits him that he can simply lure these 2 into his dungeon and make them deal with the goblins instead. There are over 24 goblins in the dungeon as of now, so he's willing to take those odds against Alto. Our hero tells the couple that there is a cave around here, so it could be possible that Philia has taken refuge inside it. Alice worries after hearing this, because she knows the cave could actually be a dungeon, which is in fact the truth. She hopes that Philia is alright, and she asks Alto if they should take the risk to go inside the cave. The Night Boy tells his side piece that all will be well now that he is here, and he also states that going into a dungeon could be good news, because they could win treasures inside it. Alto's attitude seems to bother Shinta because the Night Boy sounds very positive about this mission. This could either mean that he's confident in his skills or just plain reckless. Either way, if Alto and Alice are going to be within the vicinity of Shinta's dungeon, then he will need to fight them at some point or the other. We can clearly see that our hero's ego is hurt because he did not come out all the way just to get beaten up by a shady knight. He wants payback for what happened to him, and he intends on getting it in the best way possible. However, his demon mode is put to a halt when he forgets where his dungeon is. It's a rather funny moment because Shinta is like a lost boy now, and he can't afford to make any reckless moves. After all, if he strays too far away from the dungeon, then he might end up losing his life, which would be a pretty sad way to go. Suddenly, he hears a voice in his head which mocks him for forgetting the path to his own life source. This happens to be Tanya, who is glad to see that her master is still alive. The demon girl says that she went to pick some flowers, and now things have become very interesting. One of those things is Shinta's outfit, which has been burned, and his reputation, which has been ruined. Our hero doesn't see what's funny with this, but the demon fairy is having a field day. She asks Shinta to calm down because while she does get why he's so angry, it's also important for him to deal with the situation at hand. For now, she will make some arrangements to buy and instruct some more goblins for the plan Shinta had not too long ago. Tanya does not have the power of a dungeon master, so getting the job done will take some more time than usual. However, she will help Shinta guide Alto and Alice in a way that they will end up taking a detour to enter the dungeon. In the meantime, all that Shinta has to do is walk with the couple and keep them busy for a while. Our hero needs to waste as much time as he can, so he comes up with a plan to make that happen. Since Alto looks like a swordsman and Alice looks like a magician, it will not be as easy to trap them like how he was able to do so with Philia. That's when Shinta realizes that Alto is supposed to be the fiancé that his slave girl was talking about. Of course, our hero takes every possible chance to make fun of the Night Boy, especially when it comes to his elephant's trunk. As far as Alice is concerned, he figures that she's the side piece that Alto is having an affair with. Shinta doesn't know too much about the details, but from what he can see, Alice and Alto do look like a good couple. Since the relationship between them and Philia is a bit complex, Shinta decides to ask them some questions about it. It doesn't go as smoothly as he had planned, because he ends up asking them if they like to do shady things to each other. Tanya tells him this is not the right way to find out if they are lovers, but our hero has no experience in this kind of talk, so he tells her to keep her mouth shut. Shinta's question does make Alice panic a bit, and she even blushes as she says that there's nothing shady going on between her and Alto. The side piece says that she and the Night Boy are just childhood friends, but we all know what that means. She also goes on to say that Alto has a fiancé by the name of Philia, so this confirms all of Shinta's suspicions. Our hero figures that something romantic has to be going on between Alice and Alto, because she is acting too odd in response to a rather straightforward question. Alto is not one to mince words, so he openly says that his marriage to Philia is nothing but a scam. He states that it was a selfish decision made by their parents, and he had no interest in the idea. Alice asks him if he minds their affair, so he says no, but then again, he has no idea how Philia would feel about it. After all, he believes that people should only marry each other if they truly love each other, which is why his engagement with Philia has been going on for so many years now. None of this paints him in a good light in front of Shinta, who is just amazed by how shameless the Night Boy really is. He can't believe that Alto is leaving a cute girl like Philia hanging just because their parents made the decision to get them married. It's not right to treat a girl this way just because you don't know how you feel about her due to such formality. Of course, if it was Shinta in Alto's place, then he would have instantly accepted Philia to be his bride. As a matter of fact, he would have the wedding that very same night, so that he could violate her as soon as possible. It's amazing how someone can get a girl as cute and curvy as Philia or even Alice without having to make any effort to become popular. This is exactly what our hero is thinking as he asks Alice if she is free to fool around. She says yes, but is a little confused by the question, so Shinta asks her to go out with him. This comes as a shock to the side piece, but our hero tells her that she's very cute and stylish, so she's exactly the type of girl that he would want to date. This makes Alice blush once again, but Alto tells Shinta to stop with this kind of talk. He tells our hero to stop his charade and lead him to Philia as soon as possible. After all, he doesn't like the fact that Shinta is flirting with his side piece right in front of him. The night boy says he doesn't want Shinta to take advantage of Alice, but this is just jealousy from his end. Of course, Shinta is just stalling for time so that Tanya can do her thing, so he doesn't care how romantic the couple gets with each other. Our hero wonders if Alto wants to play with both Philia and Alice, or if he's going to leave his fiancée for his side piece. Of course, both choices would look good to any normal man, but Shinta is not going to let either one of those situations happen. It doesn't matter whether it's excessive justice or unshakable love, because neither of those can match up to overwhelming desire, ambition, and most importantly, intrusive thoughts. This is basically an open invitation from him to his new guests at his dungeon. He continues to waste time by taking the couple on various diversions, but he laments that coming up with new ways to distract people is the hardest part about being a dungeon master. As a matter of fact, it took our hero 2 hours to come up with a diversion that extends the journey by half an hour. Even so, he is puzzled by the fact that Alto and Alice are not even the least bit tired. Of course, it could simply be the fact that he was a city boy back in Japan, so he has no stamina when it comes to moving around in the forest. Shinta gasps for breath and wonders if the people of this world are built different, but that doesn't seem to be the case. The trio has reached the dungeon, but Alto thinks that it's a bit shabby. Shinta only mocks him in his thoughts, and then the night boy decides to enter the dungeon. Alice asks him to be careful because if Philia had disappeared here, then something must be wrong with the cave. Alto tells her to relax because he knows what he's doing and can take on any danger that comes his way. Shinta comments that even after taking so many detours, it looks like Alto has become fresh after seeing the dungeon, whereas our hero is out of energy. Now, Alto, Alice, and Shinta enter the dungeon and walk further inside to try and find Philia. Our hero takes a look at his stat bar and seems to confirm something sneakily when the cheating couple isn't looking. It's basically a sword that he wants to use as a weapon to take them down when they least suspect it. Since the light from the entrance is reducing, it has created a blind spot from behind, which means that Shinta is hidden in the shadows at this point. He pulls out his sword and takes aim at Alice because he's sure that he can end her if he strikes her at this moment. He is also hoping for Alto to be taken out by the goblins who are being trained by Tanya, so that will be the end of this minor hassle. One thing to note is that Shinta has never taken a life before, so this will be his first time doing such an act. However, before he strikes, Tanya reaches out to him in his thoughts. She asks him to wait and calm down for a moment because he's being a bit too impatient. Shinta doesn't get why the demon fairy is doing this, so he asks her why she's interrupting him. Tanya simply says that she doesn't want to disturb her master, but she doesn't want him to fail either. Shinta is in a favorable spot right now, so he should not try to mess it up just because of a moment of weakness. Shinta wants her to elaborate, so she says that while she doesn't know much about Alto, she can sense a good amount of magic in Alice, which means that she could turn out to be useful in the long run. It would be best to keep her alive for now, because a magician is not someone you simply end in this world. Of course, the demon girl has her own shady intentions in mind, such as selling Alice's hair for a lot of money due to the fiber quality. On top of that, she can also use the side girl's flesh as an ingredient to enhance magical powers. Tanya activates her demon mode and tells Shinta that the best part is he can keep Alice as his second slave girl and enact his intrusive thoughts on her as well. We can see Tanya's personality taking over our hero as well, because he too activates demon mode and says that it's a great idea to capture and keep Alice. With that, he keeps his sword back inside and admits that he might have been a bit rash in deciding to attack the magic girl so quickly without giving it much thought. He has the demon fairy to thank for this, but it looks like she's also turning him into a demon boy. Now, the trio comes across a treasure chest, so Alto decides to open it up. It doesn't appear to be some kind of trap, so the night boy wants to see what's inside. To his delight, there is a magic stone inside the chest, and a very big one too, which means that he can sell it for a lot of money. However, Shinta tells us that with a magic stone of that purity level, he can only summon one goblin, so he doesn't know why the night boy is so happy to have found it. He figures that such items might have a much higher value outside the dungeon, so he should try to make some foreign cash out of these stones. After all, it was pretty easy to mine them, so the supply is sorted out already. Alto is excited now, and he says that there might be even better treasure further inside the dungeon if they have found such an item already. Alice advises him to be careful once again, because it looks like the night boy is more interested in the treasures than he is in finding Philia. He says all will be well because they've come this far inside and haven't even fought a single monster. He thinks that the dungeon is not occupied by any beasts, and this plays right into Shinta's plans. He gives us a shady smile, and then we see a dead end in front of the trio. Both Alto and Alice are unable to figure why this is the case, because it was such a smooth journey until now. There's so much silence that it starts to worry Alice as well. Of course, Alto takes this chance to be romantic with her and tells his side piece that he will keep her safe no matter what. This causes Alice to blush, but it's also rather shameless of the night boy because he needs to find his fiancée. This is noted by Shinta, who might not be an angel, but is right to call out Alto for being such a shady boy. Our hero hates normies like these, and thinks it's a miracle that they are even alive at this point. He's had just about enough of this nonsense, so it's his turn now as the dungeon master to show the couple what he's really made of. After all, the plan is to tear apart their affair anyway, so he taps on the wall and summons an army of goblins to attack them. Alice notices the beast charging towards her, but Alto looks very happy to finally come across them. The magic girl tells Shinta to stay back because this seems to be the hunting ground for these goblins. Of course, our hero is the one who got them here in the first place, so he simply chills in the background and tells Alice to do her thing. The magic girl uses her scepter and unleashes an overpowered blast of magical energy to take down a group of goblins. At the same time, we can see that Alto is having the time of his life while fighting these monsters. He jumps high up into the air and unleashes his massive sword on the beasts. The Night Boy is shown to be very skilled as he takes down the goblin army with ease. He has no problems in slicing through them one after the other, so Shinta's plan is not going the way he would have liked it to. One of the goblins' heads is thrown his way as well, so he laments that this whole operation was just a waste of time. Alice is amazed by her lover boy's skills, so she praises him for it, but the Night Boy says that goblins will never be a match for him. Alto is quite proud of himself as he says this, but then he is made to eat humble pie as he gets struck on the head with some odd item. He can sense some blood dripping down from his head, so he checks it out and is shocked to see that he has been damaged. The culprit is none other than a goblin who is able to use a sling with great ease. Alto is shocked to see a monster with such skills, so he prepares to take it down as well, but this is when things go downhill for him. A voice calls out to the Night Boy stating that she knew he would come over here. Alto is frozen because he recognizes this voice from before, as it belongs to his fiancée. That's when we see Philia approaching the Night Boy with more goblins aiding her. There's a moment of silence in the room as Alto and Alice both look at Philia in her new outfit. The Night Boy is barely able to speak out her name because he can't believe that it's her in front of him. Philia simply confirms that it is indeed the same girl whom Alto was cheating on with Alice. However, the Night Boy and Magic Girl are both stunned by the fact that Philia is wearing such an outfit. They want to know why she's being like this, but the slave girl says that Tanya had told her to wear it in order to please her master. After all, the only man who can enjoy her curvy body from top to bottom is her master and no one else. Philia is a completely different girl now as she talks about being a delicacy for her master to taste. Probably because she has turned into a woman who loves the desires of the flesh. Alto is shocked by his fiancée's behavior, so he asks her to stop talking like this and wake up from her trance. Philia is not here to act like some damsel in distress, so she tells her fiancé that she is very much awake and not in any kind of trance. As a matter of fact, she even calls out Alto for being a fake guardian who only likes to pretend and talk nonsense in front of others. The slave girl has come to realize that her master is a billion times better than the Night Boy, so she has no sympathy for what is about to happen to Alto. Of course, the Night Boy's ego has been hurt, so he tells Philia that he and Alice are going to wake her up from this state of hypnosis. However, before he can do anything about it, he hears Alice crying from behind and sees her magical scepter falling to the floor. Alice screams at Shinta and asks him why he's being weird because he has now taken her as his hostage. Alto notices this and is about to act, but then Shinta tells him not to act smart, because he will end the magic girl if he makes a move. Of course, this leads the cheating couple to realize that Shinta is going to betray them now. However, the dungeon master is good at playing with words, so he reminds the cheating couple that he had only promised to take them to Philia, which he has done. He had never said anything about being on their side, so he has technically not betrayed them at all. Alto has no option but to drop his sword and fall to the floor, and then Shinta reveals that he was never going to be his ally in the first place. Now that the Night Boy has surrendered, Shinta is pleased with his subjugation and tells him that he should not mess with people the next time. Of course, he's referring to the fact that Alice had called him a creep when she walked in on him taking a bath, which led to Alto punching him in the face and threatening him. He has the upper hand now, and he proceeds to throw Alice into a dungeon room. Shinta mocks the magic girl and asks if this is a good enough training room for her. She is not at all pleased with the way things are going, but it's a different story for Shinta, who tells her that he is going to make her just like Philia. This way, she won't be able to live without him for even a day. Now that he's back in control, Shinta changes into some new clothes and is happy with the fit. He has to throw away the clothes he was wearing before as they were all burned. But it's come at a fair price now that he has imprisoned both Alice and Alto as his slaves. Of course, the outfit looks exactly the same as the previous one, so Tanya tells him he doesn't really have a good sense of fashion. However, our hero tells the demon fairy to shut up even though he knows she is totally right. Shinta had bought these clothes at the spur of the moment last night because he was very excited. Tanya now looks at her master and asks him if he's going to train Alice now, because she's sure he'd love to do unspeakable things to her. If that's the case, then the demon girl would also like to report the results of the battle that just happened. We can see that Alto and Alice are both locked up in separate dungeon rooms and a slave collar has put on Alice for hypnotic effect. However, since there is no DP in the dungeon as of now, the collar has almost no effect on her at all. On top of that, the prison rooms were added at short notice, and that had taken up a lot of DP. The dungeon master complains that he has to invest so much in just one slave collar, but the demon fairy says that as long as the cheating couple is enslaved, there's nothing they can do to fight back against Shinta. The rest is all up to the dungeon master's techniques, so Shinta has to use his shady skills on Alice. The next update is that the dungeon's DP has increased after imprisoning Alto and Alice. However, instead of using it on the collar, the DP will be used to expand the dungeon, especially since they also have all the equipment of the cheating couple. Now, Philia shows up with her master's tea and he thanks her for being a good girl. It's basically a blend of the edible grasses from outside the dungeon, so it has an odd color but is not harmful to health. Shinta sips on his tea, and then he asks his slave girl a question regarding the goblins. He wants to know how they were able to use slings with so much ease. So Philia says that she was the one who taught them this skill. Tanya is amazed by this, and Shinta asks Philia how she was able to do this in such short time. The slave girl explains that she taught the goblins these skills by using herself as an example. After all, she is quite good at teaching her pets neat tricks, so it comes across as an impressive talent. The demon fairy tells Shinta that even if the dungeon master were to order the goblins to throw stones at the enemy, they won't be able to do it if they don't know how the concept works. This means that Philia's talent for training beasts is indeed rare and useful. It also saves on costs because if a monster were ordered to use a bow and arrow, it wouldn't be able to do anything unless it gets training first. Of course, Shinta can always get specialized range attackers, but that would mean having to buy monsters with range attack skills. As a matter of fact, when Alto and Alice were fighting the goblins before, it was Philia who was commanding them and not Tanya. This is more than enough for Shinta to realize that his slave girl needs a promotion. He immediately appoints Philia as his new commander of monsters, and from this point forward, she will train all the monsters that serve him. The slave girl is pleased with this reward, and then Tanya tells her that she should continue working hard like this, because her master will keep giving her rewards for all the good things she does. This is more than enough for Philia to get motivated, and she promises to her best to please Shinta. This is a nice moment for Shinta and his slave girls, but they are interrupted when a voice calls out to them calling the dungeon master a traitor. It's none other than Alice who wants to be let out of her prison right now. She also wants to know where Alto is, but Shinta and Tanya only complain about how noisy she is. It's been a while since Alice woke up, and she's been acting out due to the fact that her slave collar has no DP. She turns out to be so loud that Shinta had to turn the sound off for some peace and quiet. The dungeon master figures that he needs to put an end to this, so he leaves the room to go and train Alice. However, Philia asks him that if he's going to do unspeakable things to her, then she would also like to come along. Shinta says okay, but wants to know why Philia wants to be with him during Alice's training session. She simply says that since she and Alice both loved the same man, it's time for her to show the side piece why her master is the better choice. This pleases Shinta, so he takes his slave girl with him to the dungeon where Alice is seen on the bed. The door opens and she can hear Shinta's voice asking her if she's finding it comfortable over here at his home. Of course, he can't expect the magic girl to look at him with a smile, and Alice calls him a traitor once again. Philia simply calls Alice cruel for talking to her master in such a way, but Shinta knows how to play this game. He tells Alice that he should be thanking her because she was the one who allowed him to meet Philia in the first place. His slave girl is a very fine woman, but Alcy doesn't seem to get the context of what he's saying. That's when Alice takes a look at Philia and accuses Shinta of doing something to her which has led to her change in attitude. The dungeon master agrees with Alice, but not in the way that she would have imagined. He explains how he acted on his intrusive thoughts and took Philia's innocence away from her, thus making her reach true womanhood. He also managed to plant his seeds deep within her soil, so this makes Alice alert. She is unable to come to terms with the fact that Philia has been violated by Shinta, but the slave girl goes on to say how her master's elephant elevated her into a higher sense of being. He was not just able to pierce her body, but also her mind, which just sounds very wrong. This is a rather odd show of emotions, so there's nothing much that Alice can do here. She sees that Philia is very happy with Shinta, but she also wants to know if Alto is alright. If he isn't alive, then the magic girl promises to take Shinta's life whenever she'll get the chance. The dungeon master is on demon mode right now, so he tells Alice that the night boy is alive, but probably not fine as he is in a separate cell where the goblins are beating him up. Shinta decides to give Alice a little peek at what's happening to her lover boy, and it's not a very pleasant sight. Alto's face is bashed and he's struggling against the goblins. So Alice feels upset upon seeing her lover boy like this. She wants to know why Shinta is doing this to the night boy, but he simply says that he's not the one beating up Alto. Also, since the night boy ended a few goblins, he does deserve to be punished for his sins. Alice wants to know if that is the case. Then why is she in a cell because she has not ended any of Shinta's monsters? The dungeon master explains that from his point of view, Alice and Alto are much worse than he could ever be. After all, they beat him up for no good reason. Then they entered his home and started to steal his treasures as well. If that wasn't bad enough, they even went on to take the lives of his goblins, who were the inhabitants of his home. Shinta asks Alice if such acts are any different from thieving murder, but she counters him by saying goblin lives don't matter since they are monsters. On top of that, dungeons are considered to be objects of abominations, so they should not qualify as homes. Shinta has heard enough, so he sits next to the magic girl, which creeps her out for a bit. He then goes on to say that if she is so confident in her knowledge, then she should also be aware of what will happen to her now that she has been caught. He unties her ropes and says that what he's going to do to her will depend on how he's feeling. He starts to tell her what she can do if she wants to be treated with some leniency, but before he can complete his sentence, Alice lands a slap attack on his face which doesn't have a lot of physical damage, but it does hurt his ego. The side piece tells Shinta to stop messing around with her because she would rather end it all over here than give in to his intrusive thoughts. Philia is enraged to see a side girl slapping her master, so she screams at Alice and is about to get into a cat fight with her. However, Shinta stops his slave girl because he has other plans in mind. Philia backs off for now. And then the dungeon master tells Alice that she can end it all if she wants, but if that is the case, then Alto will have to go as well. The night boy is anyway being used as a punching bag now by the goblins, and when they are done with him, his body will be used as nourishment for the dungeon's DP. After all, Shinta has no interest in keeping a man over here. This puts Alice in a tough spot, but she has no other choice at the end of the day, so she tells Shinta that he can do as he pleases with her. The dungeon master is pleased to hear this, so he tells her to give him a kiss of eternal love. This makes Alice blush, so Shinta asks her if she's giving up already. The side piece does as he says, and then she offers her lips to him for a session. After they're done with this, we can see that Alice is starting to blush even more, which suggests that she might be coming around to Shinta and his shady ways. He says that this was a passionate kiss, and Alice's face seems to be sparking from it, but she tells him to stop messing around with her. Judging from the look on her face, the dungeon master wonders if the kiss has had a desirable effect on the side girl. However, before he can proceed, he sees that Philia has a sad look on her face. He asks his slave girl what's the matter, so she says that she started to get excited after seeing her master getting shady with Alice. Shinta asks her if she would also like to partake in these acts, and she says yes in an instant. She wants as much of his love as possible, but this only creeps out Alice. Philia did put in a lot of hard work today, so it's only fair that she should be rewarded for it. How exactly are things going to turn out over here? Will Shinta get the harem that he's always wanted? Like, share, and subscribe if you liked this video. Hit the bell icon to get notified when I upload part 2. See you soon.